All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Tracy Camp. I'm Department Head of Computer Science at in CS at Mines, which we call our department. So at Mines, just like many other institutions on this call, we are growing extremely quickly. And so therefore our faculty seem to be constantly tired, which I suspect is probably true in your departments as well. The good news though is we've managed to use the growth in our department to change our departmental demographics. So here's some numbers for CS at Mines on our student growth over the last decade or so. You can see here that while our majors increased about 4.3 times, the number of women in our program increased 9 times, and the number of students from underrepresented groups in computing increased 12 times. So this made a big change in the percent of our students from underrepresented groups within our department, which is pretty fabulous. 21.8% for the women. I just want to throw this into context for School of Mines. At Mines, we have about 30% overall of women. So we're at about 70% of where we need to be at parity of where our institution is. So I'm showing these numbers to you partly because I'm just really proud of what we've done over the last several years in changing the demographics of our department, but also partly to just show that, I know a few things about broadening participation in computing. And so I hope you'll listen up because I have complete confidence that you can change your demographics just like we have at CS at Mines. So I'm sure you're wondering, what all did CS at Mines do? Well, we did quite a bit. If we think about the things that Colleen talked about that you can focus on within your plans and your activities. We have recruitment activities, retention activities, welcoming culture. We make sure we have a very welcoming culture, et cetera, et cetera. Colleen mentioned this wonderful resource from NC WIT. And when I look at all those things on that list, there's 81 bullets on that list. CS at Mines, we've done 74 of those items. So we've done a lot over the years, but the one thing that I just really want to stress is I think the most important thing that I've learned in this journey is how important evaluation is. If you think about it, you must evaluate in order to be strategic. And you all want to be strategic so that you're using your time most effectively. Okay, so let's talk about the process that we have seen today. We've covered each of these pieces in our presentation today separately, but if you think about it, they're all very closely tied together. The first thing you need to do is evaluate your context and come up with your SMART goals to address the issues that you see within your context. And I stress the word SMART goals. I'm big on SMART goals. They need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So then once you have those goals, then you can start taking a look at what type of best practices you might implement in order to go after the goals that you have set. And then, of course, you have to evaluate how you're doing on your goals and then loop back. So all these pieces are closely tied together. And in fact, I'm going to focus on evaluation in this talk, but several of the things that I have in my presentation, we've actually already covered today, either through Mary and Colleen's presentations or in the chat. So bpcnet.org is a fabulous resource. I hope you're all coming to that conclusion. Just a great resource for our community. If you go to the resources piece of this site, you'll see data and evaluation is one of the resources that are available. So let's take a look at each of the links beneath data and evaluation and see what's there. So I think you probably already have taken a look at the publicly available data. Mary mentioned actually that there is available some data from iPads and CCD that is available on the CRA statistics site. There's also other items that are available on BPCnet that's available publicly. So NCWIT scorecard, for example, that gives data on industry, academia, and K-12. There's also the CRA Talby survey data can be valuable for your plan, and the ACM NDC data could be valuable for those non-doctoral universities. So that's some publicly available data. Next up in the resources site is some institutional data. And Mary talked about the importance of monitoring your own data. You know, there is a lot of data that you should be, you know, paying attention to within your institution so that you can understand where your challenges are within your institution. So things like tracking, for example, it's good for you to know the number of applications that come into your program, the number of acceptances that occur from those applications, and then the number of students that enroll from the accepted list. And you should look at all of these different data elements broken down by women and racial ethnic groups. Retention and attrition is also something else to pay close attention to. As well, again, separated by different demographics. And you'll want to look at this data, of course, for both undergrad and graduate students. So to give you one example from CS at Mines, oops, that didn't, there we go. Give you one example of what we learned in CS at Mines when we looked at the applications, acceptances, and enrollments from our admissions department. We saw that 21.2% of the acceptances went to women, but the students that were enrolled were only 16.7%. However, so what we did was we implemented an activity specifically for that one data point, because that, you know, that's kind of a, you know, that's a bummer that we're not seeing the same percent of students, percent of women enrolling as we are accepting. So what we did was we implemented Zoom calls between our current Mines women with the accepted students. And the following year, after we implemented that strategic activity, we saw the percent of enrolled women go up to 24%. And so, you know, that just gives you an example how we used evaluation and analyzing our data to understand what our challenges were, to then implement a specific issue that addressed that data point, and then we evaluated it, you know, did that feedback loop to see how we did. So Mary mentioned also the importance of DFW rates in your courses. You know, if you take a look at that, you might learn something really valuable about the courses that you have. So I mentioned in the chat that CS at Mines has a data chair because there is a lot of data here that we need to collect annually and keep track and analyze. And you know, it's a process that needs to go on and on. So we actually recruited a data chair to handle all this data, and he actually mentions that he's the data chair in his BPC project plan on the proposals that he submits. So I encourage you to try to recruit someone like that in your department. So then lastly is evaluation data. So this is a huge area, and a lot of it depends on what BPC activities you decide to implement. There's so many things that you can do within your department. Colleen talked about a lot of those items and many example opportunities that are listed on the BPC net website. So for example, you know, you might want to think, you know, take a look at seeing what your students think of your program. And as Colleen really gave an energetic shout out to the CRA Data Buddy survey. This is a great, fabulous free resource that's available to all universities. Even if you're not a CRA member, you are welcome to become a Data Buddies member. So we encourage you to do that. And it provides a customized report for you on how your students responded to the survey compared to students at other students at some similar types of institutions. So for example, this shows you what we got in the CS at Minds Data Buddy report, showing us the overall satisfaction of our students with our computing program, broken down by gender identity and racial ethnic representation. And they give you a lot more data than that, just that. They let you know all of the results that they saw in their survey, and they mark the things that are statistically significant. So at Minds, one thing that we saw was that women were way less likely to consider a PhD than men were within our department. So clearly this news, when we saw this from the Data Buddy survey, made us extremely sad. I mean, that's a bummer. Because of course, we want to encourage women into our graduate program or other people's graduates program. So it's good to get this type of data because we learned we needed to reevaluate the message to women in our program about graduate school and PhD programs. Another benefit of the SERP data is it can give you really good results that you can share with your dean. So for example, here's some things that CS at Minds, we looked really good compared to students from other structural similar institutions. And so of course, I'm going to pull that out and share with my dean to just show that CS at Minds is doing some good work. So there's some really valuable benefits you can get from being a Data Buddy. So as Colleen mentioned, yeah, definitely sign up if you're not already. Another survey that you might want to take a look at to evaluate, how your students' attitudes and views about your program is from NCWIT, called the Student Experience of the Major Survey. And the nice thing about this survey is you can take it and then pull out which pieces of it that you're most interested in taking a look at. You can do the whole survey if you want to, or you can just adapt it to specifically of what you're interested in understanding. So for example, we took some of the students or some of this survey and did it with our transfer students because we wanted a better understanding of what our transfer students thought about our program. So on the chat, there was the comment of, yeah, but we also should be thinking about faculty climate and the culture. And so that, totally agree with that. NCWIT actually has a tool that will be coming out at some point that should be really valuable for this, for academics departments can use to identify where they are in developing a culture of inclusion. So keep an eye out for that. There's also a self-assessment that you can get from Berkeley. If you take a look at this link, and maybe somebody can post that link in the chat, page 23 of this toolkit has a self-assessment that you can use to take a look to see how your department and faculty, what they think. So those are a lot of things you could start doing. And then thinking about all the different activities, because we're all going to have different activities in our departmental plan, and our faculty will be working on different activities. You may not understand how to evaluate them. NSF has a resource that you can use, which is linked from the bpcnet.org website. Or if you want something more specific to computing, NCWIT has a course that you can take participate in. And 3 of my faculty in a recent NSF proposal, in their project plan, they mentioned that they were going to take this course in their plan. So that's something you might want to take a look at. So for example, if you're evaluating your implicit bias training, keeping track of the percent of faculty and students who attend the training might be something that you want to monitor over time. So the in conclusion, kind of the big do's are you want to collect data iteratively because you want to evaluate your activities and see how they're faring. And you should never assume that the activities that you're doing will work as intended. We're all in different types of environments, and so things are going to work differently for you than they are going to work for me. So in summary, this is a continuous ongoing process that you should have within your program. Encourage you to set your SMART goals, implement your activities strategically, and then evaluate how you are doing.